In this episode of Funghi and Friends, Funghi, Bernardo, and Deeze are joined by Connor Grasso, an insanely talented psycho-conceptualist artist from Alaska, and also the creative director of Shillr. We dive into Connor's love of Alaska and psychedelics, his creative journey from first picking up a camera until now, how Web3 has changed his life, and so much more. As always, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Funghi, Deeze, and guests may own NFTs discussed. GM, we're live. We're here today with a first of its kind episode, Funghi and Friends. We're live with the man, the myth, the legend, Fungible. We're live with Connor, and we got Bernardo. We're here to go deep on Connor's creative process and creative journey, and then kind of share some of our perspectives here as collectors. And we're going to be sitting down with more friends, too. We'll have Bernardo and Funghi and myself, and we'll bring on other artist friends to vibe and just kind of go deep. But yeah, first off, thank you guys for being here today.
GM.
It's a wonderful day out here in Miami. We're wrapping up Art Basel. We're here on the Monday after Art Basel, kind of relaxing and recovering a little bit before going back to the daily life. Anyway, we're going to jump in with Connor. Connor, how long have you been a creative for?
I would say probably 6 or 7 years now. I got started pretty young, and, you know, I think that was probably at some point in high school around, I don't know, maybe I was 16 or 17. And, yeah, it's been quite a long journey, and photography specifically has taken me to a lot of really cool places, and I've made a lot of really cool stuff, at least I hope. And, yeah, it's been a bit now.
So back in high school when you kind of started, you know, realizing, oh, I can be creative and have these outputs that I'm proud of, what were some of your, like, early inspirations? What was some of the media or, you know, the video games or whatever that you were into at the time?
Yeah, I mean, so I have a little bit of a different upbringing than most people. If anybody's ever seen the film Into the Wild with Chris McCandless, it goes out to, like, the bus, like, way out in the mountains. I grew up on that road for the first 8 years of my life in a small cabin with my mom, my dad, and my sister. You know, no running water. You know, we were hauling. You know, it was different than you know, a lot of people's upbringings, I guess. And, you know, I grew up, like, extremely exposed to, you know, some of the rawest natural environments that the world has to offer. I mean, you know, so far away from anything like small town, 1,000 people, you know, 8 people in my class. But yeah, I grew up, like, basically in the middle of the mountains and experienced, like, you know, 24-hour sunlight all summer and, you know, 20 below winters. And I think, you know, being exposed to that at such a young age, you know, was really inspiring. And that became, you know, really eye-opening at a young age. I had an extreme passion and love for animals and, you know, the mountains and the rivers and the fish that inhabit them. And yeah, I pretty much just spent my entire childhood, like, running around in the mountains. And that 100% has always been my main inspiration, for sure. Yeah.
And early on, did you realize, like, you still had TV and movies and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you realized the situation you were in was, like, a little different than what you saw everywhere else you looked. Like, there was no other real, maybe until Into the Wild, like,
Yeah.
it wasn't really that much to probably relate to.
Right.
Like, how did that feel?
I mean, yeah, I remember, like, eventually I did move, and it was extremely polarizing, you know? Like, my, like, social experiences were, like, you know, a few people, and I had known all my friends, like, basically since birth. Like, it was never like, I'm going and meeting, like, I'm going to an event and there's like 30 people there that I don't know. That's just that was a new feeling for me. And yeah, you know, I realized when I did move for the first time, like, you know, I had terrible social skills, lots of anxiety about that kind of stuff. And yeah, it made me realize, like, you know, I came from a very different upbringing. But, you know, again, like, I would never change that for anything, you know. I realized that was a special way to be brought up into the world, and I feel like I can offer, like, somewhat of a unique perspective in that sense.
Do you think you'll want to raise your kids in the same way
Yeah.
when you have kids?
Yeah,
you want to go back out there?
I've thought about that, you know, a lot, and I think that, you know, today, and they probably would have said this 50 years ago too, but I feel like, you know, we're losing our connection to nature at a rapid pace. I mean, look at the NFT space and, you know, the technology that we're using and AI and things. And I think when you're just, you know, at any level, the exposure to nature, you know, you can have that moment where you're like, you know, this is like our purpose, and realizing that interconnectivity and just being able to look at a tree or touch a tree or, you know, see an animal like in its natural habitat, for me I felt like that feeling of like belonging and feeling connected, which I feel like, you know, the opposite of that is, you know, and I think, you know, growing up in big cities offers really interesting perspectives socially, but you are very much so disconnected from, you know, our origins and things like that. So I would absolutely want to, maybe not necessarily in Alaska, but in a place that's very heavily, you know, surrounded by nature, raw nature too.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Like, you grew up in a place where people travel from across the world to experience, you know. People go to hunting lodges, people go to, you know, on photography journeys there, and that was just your back door, which is wild. So yeah, that's super cool and crazy to think that you grew up with such a small group of friends. I'm curious, like, were you the first to get into art and creating in your friend circle? Like, were you kind of all doing it together? What was that like? Because I imagine, you know, you're probably spending a lot of time with each other, probably developing like very close friendships.
Yeah, I think, you know, I had a couple like extremely close friends like when I was growing up in this small town, and we spent like all of our time outside. I mean, my best friend had like a few horses, so, you know, at a young age we're like going out on the horses, and, you know, at that, you know, when you live in Alaska, like you're get used to carrying around like a rifle at a young age. So, you know, me and my best friend are like 12 years old, and we've got like 22s, and we're going to like shoot rabbits and stuff, and, you know, use the fur and make stew out of it, just like stuff that people might be, you know, like, that's, you know, mind blown about. But also in Alaska, you know, there's not necessarily like an overwhelming push to be a creative person. You know, a lot of people, and even I myself, like when I got out of high school, joined a labor union and did that for like 3 years, trying to fund my creative you know, endeavors and things like that. But when I did move north about 110 miles to a town called Fairbanks, I did end up meeting a couple creative people that absolutely inspired me heavily to like kind of go for it. And that's around the time where I finally picked up a camera, and I was introduced to a couple other people that were just doing it as a hobby, and people that are still my lifelong friends that, you know, I've lived in Italy with and lived in Berlin with and Los Angeles with, that definitely brought me into it at a deeper level. And yeah, so shout out Parker, and Tropical Ratchet. Spencer Monsma was a big inspiration to me. John Wingfield was around when I was a young photographer, and yeah, so shout out to those guys, because they definitely made me believe that you can change a lot of things with art, and to just keep going for it, I guess.
Yeah, so you had mentioned, along your way you had met people who really kind of helped push your creativity and like really supported you and, your photography and your creative aspects. Did you ever meet any like hesitation or reservation from your peers or people that you knew, given, the advancement in technology and being somewhat removed from nature and like your upbringing?
I think, like my parents, first of all, were extremely supportive, and like always just, wanted me to do what I wanted to do to my best ability. My dad was like a total hippie, like lived on an Indian reservation, hitchhiked to Alaska. And my mom was like a teacher, like very loving. And so they definitely supported me in those endeavors. And out of high school, like I said, I joined a union and I worked my ass off, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, all summer, every summer for like 3 years, and was just sacrificing like that time that is amazing in Alaska, just so that I could have the opportunity to go do my creative stuff. And I think people recognize that. I think people were like, he's working his ass off doing something that's the polar opposite of what he likes to do, to go out and travel and get out of Alaska and expose myself to, places in Europe and move down to the States and, see all the different kinds of walks in life and the things that are inspirational. So I don't feel like I ever really met any resistance from my peers, but, like any artist, I've definitely met that within myself countless times. Yeah.
So early on, when you were working these union jobs, like what type of jobs are these? For the people who don't know, like what were you doing?
Yeah, so I was building roads in rural Alaska. So we would go out like really far, and we would be like fixing roads or building roads, and most of the stuff that I was doing was a lot of traffic control stuff. And you've all seen the guy with the sign, stop and go. I did that, so standing in one place for 14 hours, no matter what the weather is, no matter how crazy the mosquitoes are. And
there's bad mosquitoes up there?
Oh, it's terrible.
Worse than down here?
I mean, I'm talking about a cloud so thick of mosquitoes that there's just this black sphere around you, and there's hundreds of them, and it's really terrible. I know there's like these little ones out here, but yeah, and I worked on culvert crews and I drove pilot trucks, but the hardest part of that job was the hours and just the the jobs just sucked ass. But being 18, 19, 20 years old and working a few months and putting away $30,000 or $40,000 is pretty unheard of, and I used every bit of that to travel to new places and upgrade my camera gear and go on trips and yeah, so that's what that kind of work was, and I definitely do not miss it. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. So you're able to work those few months, accumulate enough to last you the whole year, and then spend the rest of the year. So it was like, hey, I know I'm giving up a third or a fourth of my year, but then I'm able to do what I want.
I knew that was the sacrifice that I had to make.
Yeah.
I knew that, this wasn't going to be like an easy thing. They tell you, if you're an athlete, if you're an artist, like there's a small percentage of people that, get the opportunity to do this. And I was like well, the best way for me to do that is like I have to make a lot of sacrifice, and it's not easy to give up 3 summers right out of high school, like, and especially the Alaskan summer, which is the most beautiful. If you guys ever do get to go, man, you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah,
We need NFT Alaska for the summer.
yeah, there'll be like
That would be amazing.
15 people.
So when you were working that first summer, knowing like after this, I get to go create. After this, I get to go travel. I imagine that knowledge of what was to come really helped. And I'm curious, were there any like places you were like, I'm going here right away, or like shoots, like I'm gonna go shoot this? Like, what was kind of your like North Star through that time? Like specifically, like was there a place you were getting excited to go? And was that like the first time you had like ventured out of Alaska to go traveling?
It wasn't the first time that I ventured out of Alaska, but it was the first time that I got out, like, with no real plan to come back necessarily. And yeah, in the first year, I moved to a town called Bellingham in northern Washington. And that, and I had a couple of friends from Fairbanks that I had gone to school with, and they had moved down there for college, so I was like, a year behind them, and I had just finished working, and I was like, what if like we get a house together? And that was a really new experience for me, and that was the first time that I was like living outside of Alaska as an adult, and that brought a lot of really cool opportunity, and I was introduced to some incredible photographers like Firsty and John Wingfield, who's also from Alaska, who's from Fairbanks, was living down there doing a lot of brand work. And yeah, I kind of got brought into that, and I'm quite a bit younger than these guys, and I still feel like they took me under their wing and sort of led me into some, I suppose, like more of the business side of being an artist. And I worked with a couple cool brands and stuff like that. And that was kind of like my first experience like outside of Alaska that first year. And so thankful that I had like people who had been in the industry for 5-6 plus years to be like, this is how you write a proposal, and this is like how you present yourself, and taught me a lot more about social media and things like that. And forever grateful for those guys, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome hearing that you were able to like meet those people that kind of helped you with their experience in the industry. And I'm curious, like, when you got into NFTs, was there someone or a group of people that kind of helped shepherd you and like teach you about the space? And I know you've done like a lot of really dope collabs like early on. Yeah, just would love to hear about that.
Yeah, I was definitely around and active in the space when it first started coming out, and like you could almost count on your hands like the artists that were involved, and there was like 2 platforms and nobody really knew what was going on at all, and like people were still like asking about like what does NFT mean. And I was coming up with artists like Ferocious, Ateen Cross, Femzor, Black Sneakers, people like that, which I think were absolutely groundbreaking. And the first thing we saw was like the one-of-one space, and that really took off early on. But the first time I ever sold an NFT was a collaborative piece that I did with Femzor, and that really, like, when that piece sold on Super Rare, I was like, wow, like that just covered like my rent for the next like 2 months.
Yeah,
and
it must have been a great feeling.
Yeah, and it was a really good feeling, because a lot of my previous experience was working creatively for other people, and at that moment I was like, I'm going in on this like full throttle. But yeah, some of those names that I mentioned were the first people that, sort of like fostered the space, and to see where it came from, like literally ground zero to where we are now, is insane in just a couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so great to have those people that will educate and onboard like the new wave of artists. And I mean, someone like Femzor to like have as a friend and someone to collab with, like, yeah, what a great person. That's like so great to hear. Yeah,
I love Femzor to death and love working with him, love his work. I have a few of his pieces. Yeah, we've been chatting recently about doing something again, so
let's go.
Yeah, that might happen.
Yeah, no, because that, just to put it in context, this was back in 2020, correct? Like, that's when you minted your collab with Femzor, or was it 2019?
It was 2020, late 2020. And it was a photograph that I had taken of the aurora. And if you guys have ever seen the film Brother Bear, where the animals are like, sort of these figures within the aurora borealis, that was kind of the inspiration for that. And so we had taken, the palette within my photograph, and Femzor had created these figures like sort of dancing within the aurora, and these figures like in the bottom portion of the piece, like looking into the sky. And
it's a beautiful piece. We'll have to pull it up in post.
Could put it up.
Yeah.
In the video, be like right next to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sold for 8 ETH in late 2020, and wow. ETH was like $300 at the time. And that like went up on Super Rare, and then I did a couple other collabs. But it's been a couple years now, and I just recently got on Super Rare myself.
Nice.
Which like I'm super stoked about. But that was my first exposure to like selling like tokenized pieces of art.
How did you find NFTs before this? Like you were pretty early, you stumbled in, but like what was the rabbit going into the rabbit hole that you kind of followed?
I think at the time I think I was living in Berlin. And that was it was late 2019, or it might have been early 2020. It was
before the pandemic.
Yeah, right before the pandemic. And that's actually the reason that we moved back to the States from Berlin. But I was like, Instagram is not really like working out for me. I've spent a few years now really trying to like grow on this platform. And this was around the time that they had like dramatically changed like their algorithm and stuff. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to try Twitter. And pretty immediately I found a community of photographers like Joey and Briscoe and more people that I could mention. But it took off. For me, I was reaching a lot more people than I had ever done previously. And I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. Like, it makes sense. Like, the retweet button is powerful. And I kind of found a community there. And, as I think we all know, like, you find one group of artists and that trickles into different mediums and different demographics of people from all over the world. And, yeah, I just started seeing, like, within the art community on Twitter, I started seeing, like, these little mentions of, like, NFTs, and I was like, what are all these artists talking about? Like, what is going on here? And just kind of like, it's like two roads met, and like everybody who was in the art space was like really deeply talking about this, and conversations were beginning. And then, some of these artists got on Super Rare and were like selling pieces, and like, you're seeing your friend like sell his pieces or whatever for, life-changing amounts of money. And of course you're like, this could be a new avenue for artists, 100%.
Can't ignore that.
Yeah. No.
You're like, wait a second. They're doing it. We were doing it together.
Yeah.
Why am I not doing it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And eventually, Femzor and I put that collaboration out, and it sold, and I was like, this is my avenue.
Do you remember who the first collector was of that piece?
Yeah, I believe it was like a very high level traditional art collector, and wow, I can't.
Is it Max Stealth?
It was Max Stealth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out Max Stealth.
Yeah, and I believe Max was one of the first, like, and I don't really see that name too much anymore, but Max was like very early on the one of one space and was like going in hard.
They have a hell of a collection on Super Rare.
Yeah, and so was really blown away by that.
Yeah, I'd love to know. So, like, to kind of like go backwards a little bit, you started photography in Alaska. I imagine this is a lot of like digital shots mostly. You're working in natural settings. You've done some commercial work. I know some of that too has been like directing for video as well. This is like a mixed media collab piece, is like your Genesis collab.
Yeah.
Like, what like what else? Like, you seem to be doing like a lot of different kinds of art, you know? Like, how did you get into mixed media as well? I'd love to know, because like you've released a few pieces. I think I picked up one of the first ones on Foundation. But yeah, like, how did that transpire? Yeah.
So around the time I was 17 or so, I started taking a lot of interest in psychedelics, and I had already had quite a bit of interest in pop culture, and like, you know, living in Alaska, you know, you're looking outward to these places like Los Angeles and New York, and you can't really like imagine it, and you know, all this music and just beautiful inspirational stuff is coming from these places. And so I was like very deep into, you know, I got really deep into music, and I started trying psychedelics with a group of people who were like extremely knowledgeable, very well practiced, good people. Disclaimer, like, it's not for everybody.
This is non-psychedelic advice.
But for me, that was a creative outlet, and already being quite inspired by the natural setting, it took it to a completely new level. And I think that's where I started experimenting with mixed media a bit. Is I was doing a lot of video editing practice, so I would like download like Kendrick Lamar music videos, and then I would bring them into like Premiere Pro, and then I would like remix them, and a lot of the time it would be like really trippy stuff, like a lot of different colors, a lot of geometric like effects and things like that. And then I brought that into like my photography, so I started just like taking my photos and like bringing all sorts of different things into it. And yeah, that's how I got into mixed media. And then one of my closest friends, Tropical Ratchet, got extremely deep into 3D around this same time. And, you know, as we lived together over the next couple of years in different places, I started to get really into 3D. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of the processes that, you know, took place for me getting into things outside of photography itself. You know, like I started with photo, got into video, got into psychedelics, started making some really trippy stuff. And yeah, that's kind of the way that worked out.
That's super dope. Yeah, it's funny because we met talking about psychedelics, I think, in the Justin Aversano Discord before it was Twin Flames, then before it shifted to Quantum.
Yeah.
I think I remember you sharing your work, or I think I asked to see some of your work.
Yeah.
And you showed me a collection of Aurora pieces.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, I think, that some had been taken on LSD. and then
That's true.
I think I guessed like, I think there was like 21 or 22 photos, and I guessed like 6 out of 8 of the ones that were taken.
You did. I was
on
highly
psychedelics,
impressed.
which is, I was very
Good hit
impressed.
rate.
Yeah, it's a good hit rate, and what I was blown away with was like the ones I didn't get were like some of the crispest shots, like at night of the aurora. Man, what the fuck is it like being out in the Alaskan wilderness with your camera gear at like 2 a.m, like on mushrooms, taking photos?
I think like it was sort of a rite of passage for me, and like because I had grown up, you know, experiencing that my whole life, it didn't necessarily seem as crazy to me then when you would tell somebody that. But you know, always in retrospect, I'm like, okay, it's pretty nuts. Like, but it also took a really long time for me to be able to operate on sort of a linear path while using psychedelics, trying to create imagery that like made sense and conveyed a sort of deep, natural, you know, sense of connectivity and things like that. And some of the best experiences of my life are like negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit on the top of a tower, on a tab of LSD, like photographing the aurora borealis with like friends, and that just sort of became like normal. Like in high school, I didn't go out very much, and I went out to shoot a lot, and I had a close group of friends who were like down to do that, and that's all we did for a long time, for a lot of years.
I'm curious, like how did your use of psychedelics affect you? You know, because you're in a place where you're kind of like forced to be deeply connected with nature. You've been there your whole life. What did that kind of do for you? You know, like, because I imagine as well, like, you seem to have a connection with the aurora. And like that in and of itself is a very psychedelic phenomenon. So like I'd love to hear a little bit more about like your connection to psychedelics and your connection to the aurora too.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, you know, I was fortunate enough to grow up like very exposed to the natural world, and my parents were like always getting me outside and pushing me to spend time outside, and to think deeply, like at a very young age. So when psychedelics came along, I think it, for me, furthered it at a very high level. Like I had already felt sort of a deeper connection that some might find using psychedelics, but when I did start using them, it took it to like a very deep level of feeling like, you know, like asking myself extremely existential questions and like pushing myself to feel like a purpose and what it means to be on Earth, and like how things are temporary. And I think it made me grow up really fast, actually. I think at a young age I had already felt like I had answered a lot of key questions for myself, and that sort of fast forwarded my creative process, because finding that at a young age I feel like is rare, and then being able to sort of skip that time in your life where things are really confusing and get right to the point of, this is like my story and this is what I want to talk about and this is what is important, and being able to put that into my art and share that. That felt, I always feel fortunate for that, and I always think, you know, I always thank psychedelics for giving me the opportunity to sort of find a deeper knowledge at a very young age, and just, you know, it made me realize I know exactly what I wanted to do with my life by the time I was like 19.
Wow.
It's crazy because you know, you mentioned your experience with psychedelics and it has you questioning like, who am I? What's my place on this earth? I feel like your art, from, you know, what I've seen, has shifted. You did a lot of like Alaskan landscape photography featuring the aurora, but you've shifted to these super mysterious like blues and reds, and you have subjects in your photos kind of looking out. Would you say that, you know, that is a reflection of like your experience with psychedelics and like the questioning of like, what is everything? And, you know, I see your photos and they're so mysterious. They give off that vibe, and now it's very clear to me, you know, where that came from. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the stuff that I've been working on has been some attempt to like visually convey different sorts of psychedelics and other substances. And I think a lot of my work has pivoted from trying to share people my environment, and now it's become a more interpersonal journey of like self-discovery, and a lot of my pieces are you know, I believe commentary on working to understand yourself and working to, you know, love yourself, staring yourself in the eyes and asking yourself like, you know, deeper philosophical questions, you know, being empathetic, being loving, and I think, you know, my work has taken a serious turn into like self-discovery sort of as a whole, and representing like different mindsets that you have at different times and different, you know, experiences you have, you know, different positions that you take on subjects. And, you know, a lot of it, I think, you know, I did a project this past summer called Memory Palace, and that was a lot about my own issues with masculinity and my own issues with not being an honest person, and commenting a lot on ego and stuff. And, you know, I think, you know, maybe without psychedelics I wouldn't have been like, hey man, you have some questions to ask yourself, and how you act affects other people and you pass your energies along. And yeah, over the last you know, year, I think my stuff has taken a very deep turn towards commentary of like oneself. Yeah
Psychedelics are great for that. I always give people the caution of like, you may go in being like, I'm gonna have the best time ever, and you may start asking yourself some like really intense questions,
and it's scary.
And yeah, it's scary. It's that like experience of ego death, you know, where you're just sitting outside like just wondering why the hell you exist and who you really
are. Or like,
are.
what am I doing, you know? And you can become very analytical of yourself, but at the same time, like, you know, that's the I feel like the whole, or not maybe the whole purpose, but an important topic in that is realizing that you might be like, what the hell am I doing? But like, the whole point is to accept like what you're doing, you know, regardless, you know what I mean? In the sense that like, you know, there's no right or wrong, and there's no like, you know, stairway to becoming a certain type of individual. And I think it goes back to like accepting yourself as you are. But that's a process that you learn over, you know, I think years.
Yeah. And just going to the like self-acceptance part, and I guess sort of kind of bringing this question somewhat full circle. A couple of your recent pieces, you put out Empathogen and Entheogen. I feel like those both have some strong ties to honoring like who you are and where you come from, but as well as like what you have struggled with. I'd love to hear a bit on those pieces, because those are the first shots I've seen of you, tarps off, you know, in the woods.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like you're really bearing yourself, but also like the environment that you are from. So I'd love to hear a bit about that, because it's very, like, those are two of your most powerful pieces in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I will always, and anybody who knows me will get sick and tired of me talking about Alaska. Like, I know people get annoyed because I'm just like constantly like, I'm the only Alaskan person you're going to meet. Alaska's the best. I'll tell people a million times about what it's like to be there in the summer, and just how raw it is and eye-opening, et cetera, et cetera. So I will always try to implement, you know, some natural aspects, and a lot of the time predominantly like an overbearing, you know, environment that consists of trees and you know, beautiful skies and those things that make me feel like connected and purposeful, but also at the same time, and I think, you know, I've had the pleasure of becoming close with, you know, a few conceptual artists, like Joey the photographer, Ben Zank, Summer Wagner, Briscoe, people that I've come to call friends and feel like close to and definitely inspired by. And that's when I sort of challenged myself to bring the knowledge that I found with psychedelia to my images, and using like myself as a subject to convey emotions that I think everybody feels like at one point or another. But also trying to discover myself even at a deeper level. And in Pathogen, for me, was a lot about just like showing my respect and love for the natural environment, which made me the person that I am today. So that's sort of, you know, the reason that I created that piece, was to convey to people like the absolute importance of pushing yourself to connect with the earth, and just also just being loving to anybody and that you meet, and try to become a more empathetic person. And Entheogen was a lot more within the same forest. That was more about like looking at myself, and I think I visually display that, where there's multiple figures of myself looking, you know, directly into the lens, and sort of when I see that, I'm like looking at myself and analyzing myself, and making, you know, much deeper commentary about, you know, the individual just in general. And I hope when other people look at that, they feel like they're staring back at themselves, asking themselves, you know, those questions about, you know, what's my purpose? You know, how can I do better? How can I be better? And spread, you know, love while doing that.
It's one of those things where I feel like the psychedelics really does, like you said, accelerate the introspection, and it's not always good. Like as Funghi said, like you don't really know what you're gonna get, and you might have things repressed that you aren't extremely ready for. But it's also like, if you go in with an open mind, it's kind of cleansing. Like I think that's something here. You know, Funghi.
Yeah,
we've talked a lot about psychedelics across a lot of various talks and platforms, but it's one of those things where it's a little scary, but like it's actually a benefit if you can keep an open mind. And I think like it's really powerful, like you said, for people to experience that and be able to be honest with themselves. Like sometimes I think a lot of people have a really hard time being honest with themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's like, life is so fast paced, you know, I even think it's a challenge to like take that step back sometimes and be like, whoa, like I've just been like speeding. The last 6 months is like a blur, like, you know what I mean?
Especially a week like we just had.
Yeah,
Like
the week that we
this
just had
last week is just
feels that way.
all a blur.
I'm ready to go back to Alaska.
Yeah.
And, like, go back into like my
Recharge
shell. But yeah, like you said, like sometimes it's not fun, and I think going back to my parents again, always being really loving and open-minded, like I knew that when those things did come about, and it's not like I took psychedelics one time and it was like, oh, I don't feel like, oh, I've confronted like death and I'm like cool with it and like I'm ready for it. It's a process, and that stuff, it gets really scary. But I think it's questions that humanity has to ask themselves to further our species. You know what I mean? It's like we can't get caught up in like a synthesized lifestyle, because I think we work backwards in that sense. Like one of the things that became so apparent to me when I would be using psychedelics in the mountains, no people anywhere close, was observing the fact that like, we've disconnected ourselves so much from the idea that we're also animals, and we've accelerated like industry so fast, and the earth is like beginning to die, and you look around and you look at all these other animals who've been here for like much longer than us. You look at the trees and the plants, and they're doing just a-okay. Like they're not taking more than they need. They're sharing their energy with like other people. All the animals are doing that. They've been here much longer than we have. And that became extremely apparent to me that we need to reconnect to nature for the survival of like humanity, in my opinion, because we will destroy the earth, and we just have to look back at nature and take notes and be like, we're getting too far out of being contributors to this ecosystem, and we're taking too much.
I have this like extremely nihilistic approach where I just assume that we're gonna like blow up ourselves, and it's just kind of inevitable. But like we can be along for the ride and like kind of spread good vibes while we're here. But like I'm not super optimistic on just sadly like humans are humans at the end of the day, and unless we can like mass I don't know, put mushrooms in the water.
The fact that I checked the floor on bunkers within the past 3 months, I think just speaks to
I have a place in
troubling the
Alaska. I have a place in Alaska,
floor
and if
like?
you need to use
What's
it,
the floor?
it's there.
All right,
If
I'll hit you up. for
everybody
sure.
here is invited to my secret
Top
property
top secret bunker.
Yeah.
in Alaska.
Things pop off, get a flight to Alaska.
But I mean,
Take care of you.
it's not like, humans, nothing is going to like last forever. You know what I mean?
No.
Like eventually it all comes to an end.
We'll have our like dinosaur asteroid moment,
Yeah.
but it'll probably be
Yeah.
our own asteroid that like
Totally.
we use on ourselves.
Totally.
But
Yeah.
like, damn,
What's
not to make it super dreadful. It's
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, I know,
yeah.
like,
but
getting
things are
into-
great and
Yeah,
actual dread.
yeah,
like that.
nothing. Just like a little nihilism.
Yeah.
To wrap up.
But they're
our best.
important. It's important conversation.
No, for sure.
Yeah. I'd love to know like how, so like, yeah, we've covered some of your work. How has being in the Web3 NFT space impacted you? Because we're talking about like the balance of like being outside, connected with nature, and you work, very much like a lot of hours in a space where touching grass is a meme, but it's an accurate meme. So I'm wondering like, how has that been for you? Has it been tough to keep a balance? Yeah, I feel like you probably go outside more than all of us.
Well, it's cold as fuck in Alaska right now, so maybe not right now. But it's definitely changed my life in every aspect. Like a year ago, like sleeping on couches all over Los Angeles, trying to make shit happen one way or another. And then, I really delved into the Web3 space, and fortunately was able to move forward working in that space all alone, and I didn't have to work for anybody else, and that allowed me more time to be creative and to create relationships, and move freely. And I've met so many cool artists, and it's given me the opportunity to go to events like this. It's given me the opportunity to settle down a little bit. I have an amazing girlfriend that through this space, I'm able to explore a relationship with somebody, and without that, things would be much harder. And the balance I've been having to rediscover that a bit, and I've just recently moved back to Alaska this past summer, after some time in Berlin, Los Angeles, and northern Italy. And I just felt like I needed it bad, for sure. I was really needing to rediscover my connection, and I went back up to Alaska for the summer just to visit for, a month or two, and then all of a sudden I'm moving back here. So I've needed to, rediscover that a bit, and Alaska has provided that for me, but it's definitely a challenge in the wintertime because it's cold as a bitch outside, and I'm getting we're getting a maximum of 4 hours of sunlight. So if you want to go out into the sun, then get ready to be cold as fuck. And just knowing that I have a nice apartment, and that
It's the big client.
and that I work with Bernardo and Fungible and Eli and TP and Root Gamma at a Web3 organization. I spend a lot of time working in the space outside of maybe necessarily the art world. So I'm putting a lot of energy towards understanding that better, and thinking about those things that I don't immediately think about as an artist. But I'm definitely very happy and comfortable where the space has brought me, and I've also been able to pick up art from people that I'm absolutely inspired by, which I never thought a year ago I would necessarily be able to have liquid ETH to buy art.
Feels good.
Yeah, it feels fantastic, but it also feels very foreign at the same time.
You mentioned working with Funghi, Bernardo, a few other awesome people. What do you do at Shillr, and what's the main role?
So I mostly handle creative endeavors, I would say. Of course, I'm there to consult with our clients about different things, and I'm involved in, I think the whole team does a good job at having conversations. The whole team is involved in pretty much everything that we're doing. But when it comes time to curate artists for displays like we had in Miami, and communicate, conversate, see what we can do better for artists, and I handle anything to do with our website. We're working on some pretty cool branding stuff that hopefully will be out before the end of the year, and taking that to the next level using 3D is something I'm looking forward to getting back to when I get back to Alaska. And yeah, that's mostly what I'm doing at Shillr.
Yeah, it's so great. Like your role as kind of like a creation lead is really amazing. And like one thing that I've come to really appreciate as you know talk about curation is your discovery of artists and your willingness to share that with our team. And so I've always thought, you know, you have been a great person to kind of like stay in tune with, to know like who are, you know, the up and coming artists who are making a splash, who to check out. You've always had like really great finds, and like, you know some amazing people that I would never have discovered without you. And so that's like, I know Funghi appreciates that, and you know the rest of our team does as well. But it's just been amazing to have like your ability to curate that list of artists for the rest of our team to like discover through that process. Like I've really come to appreciate that about you.
Ditto. Yeah, absolutely. We like created like an art share channel just in our team chat, in our Discord, and Connor's always dropping heat from artists that I've never seen before.
I've become the like internal art consultant for the
Yeah.
Shillr team at like some sort of level, which like I'm absolutely happy to do that. And you know, I've also just been blessed to find like a lot of love, like symbiotic, you know, feelings towards a lot of artists, and I'm always trying to do whatever I can to like further people's connections, you know, connect people with other people, you know, help people get their art out, and in turn also like I think Shillr does an incredible job as like a company in the space at you know, doing that for people. Totally.
Yeah, you made that kind of be a possibility the first time, because we like our first like billboard van just kind of like came together like out of the blue, and I remember asking you like, hey, would you be able to whip up a video? Like none of us know how to do this shit. And yeah, 3 days, Connor and I just like we're like team no sleep. Just
this was pre me working at Shillr.
Yeah, it was kind of like a trial sort of thing. We're like, hey, like would love to have you, but like maybe this could be like a fun thing to see if we vibe to just work on this video. And then yeah, in like 3 days you put out like an hour and a half collection, kind of like slideshow using like music from Web3 artists, videos, animations, and stills. You created like the graphics for it in the background, and like, yeah, man, it was kind of like as soon as we did that, I was like, all right, we got to keep this. We got to keep this motherfucker. Like
stories like that are important for people to hear too. Like there's a lot of people in the space who, I don't want to say feel like entitled or anything, but there's a lot of people in the space that like won't even think of like working for free or even like on a part-time basis or something. And like when you like collab, like there's definitely a lot of people who come to me and they're like, hey, like what opportunities do you have? And I'm like, you know, I don't really have anything like full time, but like might need help with something small. And like the people who are willing to like do the small things, and then you're like, oh wow, like you're capable of so much more. Holy shit! Like that's how we found Discord moderators who've like joined the team part time. Like that's how we found everybody.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's important for people to listen to. Like just get involved. If you see a way you can add value, and like
yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely important to, you know, do. I think for me, in my own opinion, I do think that it is important to do things for free and make connections, because, you know, we're trying to create things here, and you know, things get confusing when money enters the conversation. But you also have to realize there's a big difference going to somebody with a portfolio that's stacked as fuck and being like, hey, what do you have for me? This is what I can do. And I learned that one the hard way too. You know what I mean? I definitely went into things being like, I've got like 1-2 cool things like in my portfolio, and I'm like, I'm ready for this now. And being like, I want to get paid for this. And then being like, yeah, well, that's just not going to happen. And I'm like, having that internal conversation as an artist where like, I don't want to get used, but also like, how fucking bad do I want this shit? And I did a lot of a lot of stuff for free, and I wouldn't change that. And it definitely got me to my current position, like tenfold.
Yeah, I always tell people that's how I got to where I'm at too. Like I was just in Punk's Discord helping people get punks.
Yeah.
And I was like doing it for free. Just like,
Yeah.
if you had a punk, if you liked any of my punks and I was flipping it and you were a first time punk owner, it was like, here, you can have this for the price I paid.
Yeah.
And that was like something, that turned into hosting a bunch of spaces. And it was like, let me just bring up cool artist friends. And then it's like, all right, boom. Now we're like doing podcasts. It's way better than spaces we found.
Yeah.
Like, damn, we don't need to like talk over each other and we can make eye contact and it's just way better. But doing stuff and just giving back to the community and just basically providing more value than you take is like, I don't know, like the golden rule of
Absolutely.
Web3 and just life in general.
Yeah.
So definitely something I try to like share with other people. And whenever I hear that, I'm like, good, yeah, let's talk about that more. Because, I don't know, the more we can talk about it, the more people hear it, the more other people do it. It's like kind of the perpetrating thing.
100%. I've always felt like your philosophy and what's so dope about the name We Do a Little is like you embody and so many people in the space embody the, I guess, kind of ethos that like if you keep doing a little, you'll eventually have done a lot, and like it's pretty wild what the compounding interest of experience and connections and new like knowledge and skill acquisition gets you, like feel like, yeah, I very luckily stumbled into this space. I've gotten into art collecting, have made some of the best friends of my life. And yeah, for the first time have like a job that I'm like really excited about every day. It's more like it's hard for me to fall asleep now because I'm excited to work the next day. Whereas before it was like going to sleep was easy and waking up was hard. And yeah, it's all from like doing a little of this and a little of that. And then, oh shit, like we're in Miami doing a podcast together. Like it's really wild how it comes together. And I totally agree. Like there's so many opportunities, I think, for creative people in this space. Looking at like, just like, we work with like a lot of different companies, a lot of projects and platforms, protocols, and everyone's looking for like content. That's been an example I've been giving people who I know are maybe looking to like supplement income, but like they're looking for like content, and curation is huge. We're getting a lot more like art collectors who really don't know where to start.
It's tough.
It is tough.
We didn't know where to start.
We
were just buying shit we liked.
Not at all.
We were just like, oh, like we like this person, like we like this art piece, like I'm gonna buy it. And
Totally.
like now it's, one thing I've had this talk a few times, but like we need more collectors, and we need more like educated collectors, and that does start with curation, but also just like education in general. Yep. I've found that like sometimes when I have free time, I'm trying to go back and learn more about art history, or just pay even more attention to like contemporary traditional art. I think like Art Basel has been a good time to do that and kind of pay more attention to the broader art market outside of NFTs so that we can learn a little more about what the hell we're doing. Because like as we expand, it's going to have to encompass everything and not just be like its own niche. But yeah, it's an interesting time as a collector. It's like, how do we bring in these new collectors is what I'm thinking of as a collector / builder in the space, building, a way to collect anything with anybody. So it's like, all right, how do we just bring in more collectors, period?
Totally.
But yeah, welcome back, GM.
I'm back.
Yeah, just a quick reprieve.
Yes.
Nothing crazy.
Yeah.
One thing I have a question for you, Funghi, is like, what's your day-to-day look like? I feel like you're busy from like 7 a.m. to like midnight, and then like you go to bed and then you do it again. Is that
That's
what it is?
like, yeah, that's pretty accurate. Like, so I live on the West Coast, and I wake up every morning feeling like I'm behind,
Yeah,
like,
you're 3 hours behind the world.
I'm 3 hours behind. So like I get up at like 6:30 Pacific.
Damn.
Yeah, every morning, slam a coffee, like it's ready for me, like timer on.
Boots on the ground.
Yeah, boots on the ground. Take my dogs out for a stroll. I've got 2 cute little rescues. Yeah, but instantly it's like pop on some headphones, hop into like the Nifty Portal space or like Farouk's like GM NFTs just to like catch up on stuff. scroll, check emails. We have like a company like stand up every morning. And then a lot of meetings like for work and just to keep relationships going. I'm trying to do that more often. Like, I feel like it's really easy to just talk to friends in DMs and like on Spaces, and you know, once in a while like realize like, wow, I really haven't like connected with like you or Sobi or Jay or Connor or even like these guys like one-on-one. So yeah. And then if I didn't have dogs, like I would not be going outside like nearly enough. Like
so we like the dogs.
We love
Where,
the dogs.
where are the dogs when you travel? Do you have family or do you have to kennel?
So yeah, I've got an incredible girlfriend
Thank God.
taking care of our dogs. We've got a house sitter as well that comes by.
Traveling with pets
chill.
is the worst. It's like you get stressed out if you don't have that support system to take care of them.
Totally. Yeah, and they're kind of angsty dogs. Like they've had tough goes at life, and
Yeah, they're like, "Where's Dad?"
yeah, where's my dad? Yeah. And then yeah, I probably like work pretty straight up until like 6 p.m. every day. So it's I usually get up and I'm like doing
Yeah, I guess that
something.
makes sense. It's like 9 p.m. my time, so I see you all day my
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I try and shut it like during the bull market. Like I was often working till midnight PST and then getting up at 6. And I hit a point where like I literally started like shaking one day. Like I was cold, feverish, wasn't sick though.
Not good.
And I was in a call with like Alejandro from NFT Now, and cut it kind of short. And then I went to bed for a nap at like 11 a.m. and woke up like 20 hours later and was like, I've been going off like 4 hours sleep for 6-7 months.
Yeah, you probably needed that, huh?
And my girlfriend's like, where the hell are you? So I've tried to like really find some balance and like at least, you know, put in like a 10-hour day, 11-hour day regularly, but shut it down early and like relax.
Yeah,
like
you gotta take
not
that time.
stare at Twitter. Yeah.
It's tough. I also have a problem, and God bless Mrs. C's.
God bless.
Because
Jeez.
there'll be days there I'm just, for me it's like 8:30, 9 a.m. is normally
Yeah.
when I'm in the groove, so it's like your 6 a.m. But then I'm up till like 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Normally those last like 2 or 3 hours playing Madden or Call of Duty, just jamming that in.
Yeah.
But then it's like at the expense of a relationship. Like, okay, I gotta like balance that out too.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
tough.
it's so important to make that balance, but it's so different than like any other like industry or field because markets don't close.
No, and anything can happen, man.
Yeah.
Like shit just happens. You're like,
Yeah.
oh fuck, it's like 11 p.m. and a new thing is out. Like,
Exactly.
do I min it? And then like you go to bed, you don't min it, you wake up and it's fucking 5x and you're mad. And you're like,
Yeah.
I should fucking min this thing.
And not just that, but like you hear about like a new bridge exploit or like a new hack, and it's like midnight, and you're like, well, now I gotta hop on a space to hear about this because it's
my
going
shit gone?
live.
Is it over?
Our fun's
Yeah.
safer.
Well, that's another stressful thing about the
Yeah.
space is like you're constantly just going. I mean, I have a lot of stuff in USDC, like a lot of 7/8, and it's like,
Yeah.
all right, this is safe, I
Yeah.
think. But then there's a world where like the government's like, fuck USDC, and then you're like, oh fuck, like I'm fucked, and then you gotta think about that. Then you gotta think about all the other shit. Like, well, if my house burns down, is my stuff backed up? And then you gotta back that stuff up, and it's
Yeah,
a whole.
when you start thinking about it too much and getting a little too paranoid, you're like, well, shit. I
Yeah.
hope things are
But you
safe.
also too want to do like the minimum you can.
Yeah.
To hedge against anything, like anything you can protect yourself against. It's like, fuck it, like I should do it because I am my own keys and my own bank, and like I would still rather have it in my hands than the bank's hands in a way.
Totally.
At least, like, not saying like when I say the bank, I guess I mean more like the FTXs or like the
Yeah.
centralized crypto exchanges. I feel very like fine with my money in an actual like Fidelity account,
Yeah.
a brokerage account. Like
Yeah.
that's fine. But like I don't want to keep any funds centralized.
Yeah, I mean, when I first got
in
into the
crypto.
space, my older brother was the one that was telling me about Ethereum. He had talked about Bitcoin a while back, but he was telling me about the Mt. Gox hack, and he was like, if you're buying ETH on Coinbase, don't leave it in there. Like, always send it to your wallet, and that was one of the first things that I heard. And like, ever since then, I mean, it was like a lot to learn and to understand, like, I'm truly the owners of my funds. Like, no one else has access to this. If I forget this shit or like my seed phrase is lost, like, that's it. And it took me like a second to kind of realize like the importance of that. And now, I mean, I just love that that's the case. I think it's so important. And like, it just goes to show with like centralized exchanges going down, like, it really is so important to be the owner of your crypto.
Yeah, you would hate to save it all and then lose it because of something you couldn't control.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of like the crazy thing this year is we've seen so much collateral damage in all the blowups, and it's a good reminder that like you need to manage that risk because a lot of people got a little lazy with it and like trusted. I mean, Coinbase is a public company. Like, trust them, but it's still like I trust myself.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about this ecosystem is it should be trustless, like you shouldn't have to trust anyone.
But verify.
Yeah. So, yeah.
How do you, as an artist, going kind of back to art side of things, it's kind of a blend, but like, how do you think of like risk management, portfolio management, and collecting in the NFT space? Because that's probably something. I mean, it's something I didn't have to think about till collecting, and I'm sure it's something a lot of people didn't. So curious how you've kind of evolved on those.
I'm not the perfect person to ask this question because I've definitely like been in situations where I'm like buying art when I shouldn't be, and I think everybody does that at a level, but also when you're an artist and like you really like a piece of art, you're like, yeah, like I've got a little bit extra that, for food.
For food.
And
taxes and
like
good to go.
Things that I need and like my electric bill, like, yeah, I think we're good. And then I'll buy this piece of art, and in the last 5 or 6 months I've gotten much smarter, and I've made my decisions to like pick up pieces with a deeper understanding of market and the artist and things like that, and I've taken a more structured approach to that. And at first it was not very structured, and I'd find myself in some sticky, not necessarily financially smart situations, but I also was pretty good with money at a young age already, just going back to joining a union and having a large sum of money to use to move forward. And my immediate intention with those funds was like, I'm going to use this as smart as I possibly can to get myself to the position I want in the best way possible, right? So I was like, how long can I go with this? And like, I needed to stick to a certain protocol to like, spend the next 8 months like doing whatever I wanted to do, and not find myself in a situation where I'm like, oh, I don't have work right now. And so I think, thank God for like Fungible, Bernardo, TP, Rugema, and the guys on the Shillr team, because like I'm young, I'm 23 years old. They've definitely been there to consult me, and I've learned so much from them just from like our morning meetings, and made some good investments like outside of the art world that have given me the opportunity to like pick up more pieces and get a comfy apartment and things like that. So the Shillr team has definitely brought in more lengthy knowledge about this kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and Funghi, I mean, you're someone who I feel like you're collecting a new piece every day. Well, maybe not every day, but like I'm always just like, man, Funghi is on a tear. How do you look at like collecting and portfolio management and risk management?
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely like I've been on a couple collecting benders before, but I guess as it relates to like collecting art, I was looking back around like March of this year at how I'd performed as like a PFP flipper, and like how my attention had been swayed by that side of the market. And like I did well, like made some good calls, like some good trades. Got very lucky overall though, as we all kind of did.
Yeah.
But I looked at where my focus had been, and I looked at the things I'd said no to. Occasionally those would be like, flips or something like that, or, oh, I'm not going to degenerately mint a bunch of Azukis.
Damn.
Can't
believe.
I'm
going to focus on the art.
But the thing that really stung was like, I looked at some of the money I had spent on collectibles, and I looked at the money I hadn't spent on artists that I was very bullish on. And I like Bernardo and we hosted ACK's first Twitter space, and did like the first interview with him, and like I could have picked up his work for like half an ETH back then. And like times. Claire Silver, same thing, like was like, I'm so confident in both of you, I know you're gonna do so great. But I was so like laser focused on the PFP market and on any kind of collectible trading that I just didn't really think I was like, I should be collecting it. It just didn't really pop into my head. And then I kind of thought, I was like, wow, if I had, collected works from like the artists that I've met and am very confident in, that would have outperformed all of my PFP trading with a much lower cost basis overall. And yeah, it just made me kind of rethink things and be like, okay, now I have all of these like whatever insert adjective plus animal in my wallet.
Sappy.
And yes. and I'm looking at them, they're liquid as fuck, and I'm like, I don't even like how these look. Like, at least, and like, what did they do? Like, maybe kept a team going on a runway or roadmap for like a couple months longer with royalties. But like, I'd rather be sitting with a bunch of art, knowing I had supported artists, and at least had pieces I was really proud of holding and had like a sentimental connection to, and never sell any of them, than have that experience with PFPs again. So I kind of restructured how I was spending ETH, and ETH like tanked to like $800. So I just scooped up a bunch of ETH and was like, I'm going to put like a decent, percentage of the funds I'd set aside for trading into art instead. And I always make sure my taxes are good. Like, always make sure I've got a comfy saving set aside, and I'm like not going to be in trouble. But we do, like last night at the fake Basel, like, we get a couple drinks in, and then we look at stuff, and we get caught up in
start appreciating the art. Couple drinks deep.
But that, I still I knew I would, that Jake Fried print, like I knew that I would wake up feeling very happy with that. But it can be tough. Like, it is important to spend within your limits. I do a pretty good job of that. But it's definitely, there's been times where I'm like, I gotta hit pause. Like, I'll never collect all of the art I want to collect.
It's tough.
And I can't say yes to every kind of DM or like, have you seen this new piece or whatever. But I've also been like, I think during this Art Basel, really been thinking that from the artist's perspective too. And I know we already asked Connor, but I feel like I've noticed you in the past, like, as you said, 6 months, really restructure like what you're doing with your sales, structure how you're like kind of handling your own like safety net and trading and stuff. And also setting aside, I think one thing that's so good, it's like I always tell artists, and I've reached out to a couple after they've had like big sales of collections, and been like, please don't spend your ETH right now. Like, give it a couple days, let the neurochemical dust settle. Like, you're riding a massive high. Totally. And swap some stables, like set your taxes, and also like set aside, like after your taxes, your safety net. I think like the next fund before your art collecting should be your like event budget, you know? Like, I think it's been really important. And I feel like you've done a great job of that.
Yeah,
I love to see.
it's if we want to perpetuate a space where artists can make art, just solely make art, that information is extremely pertinent because, you know, a lot of artists grind out of like bad places, and you see that money, and I've done it myself more times than I can count, and then it's gone quickly. And you know, it is really important to spend the time to learn about those aspects so you can find yourself in a situation where you're safe and stable, and when tax season doesn't come around, like all of a sudden everything you did in the last year is like kind of fucked, and or you have to feel the pressure to put work out, maybe not necessarily like when you want to, then you can rush your process, and you know, you can affect you know, your sales structure, which can be very, you know, touchy. And then yeah, so I do think, and like I said, like these guys have shared a lot of knowledge with me and helped me get myself into a situation where like I'm not like next week I'm fucked, which is what I've been used to for my adult life, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think all my artist homies, I know a lot of them are practicing like, you know, being very safe with their funds, and people also got shit that they got to take care of, you know what I mean? So sometimes you do have to like bite the bullet and, you know, do those kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really good thing to remember. Like I've said it a few times. Like, to me, one of the worst things that could happen is we lose an artist because they can't pay their bills and their taxes because they aped a bunch of whatever animals,
Right.
or they you know, like bought a bunch of art that they, you know, maybe shouldn't have spent right after getting a sale.
Yeah.
And I think like you've done a really good job of collecting art and supporting your friends, but you've put us on to a bunch of amazing artists. And for me, like, that's like just as valuable, if not more at times, shilling for your friends and like sharing great art with collectors, than, you know, just spending all of your ETH on stuff. So yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, I appreciate all the stuff you've shared, and I feel like I'm seeing a lot more artists do that than drop stacks. Yeah.
I mean, if there's anything that I can ever do for somebody else, I try to do that when I can. But you know, there's also like, in all honesty, that's like sometimes that's hard, and sometimes you feel like that's selfishness, but you have to know, like I talked about earlier too, like the energy that you're putting out. Like sometimes you have to be like, yo dude, you're being a bitch right now, and you can you can create an opportunity for somebody else, and you don't know how far that goes sometimes, you know what I mean? And people have done that for me, so I know what that feels like, and it feels really fucking good. So I try to just like share art as much as I possibly can that I love, and you know, sometimes that leads to you know, sales for somebody else, and you gotta put that energy out there, because it does come back around, you know.
We are coming up on top of the 90 minutes. Are there any questions that we want to ask every guest? This is our first episode, so we haven't really thought too much about this, but in every other episode we have like certain questions where like we just ask every guest what it is. Are there any that you can think of that you would want to ask every single guest at the end to wrap it up with?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're too kind of deep, but
No, go
Yeah.
for it. Can never be too deep.
all right. If you could say anything to your childhood self right now, Connor, chilling in Alaska, 14, whatever age like pops to mind when you think of that, what would you say?
It's a bit cliche, but the first thing that comes to mind is like trust the process. Like, there's been so many times where I've doubted myself and, you know, gotten upset or felt selfish or been upset, like, why are things not happening for me? And you go down this like avenue that's not helping you get to where you want to get, and coming back to like doing what you know, and like trying to get better at it, and like believing in yourself, as fucking hard as that is. You just gotta trust the process, and you know you're doing that when you're like going in 100% all the time and giving in your all and like doing something and like asking yourself like, did I try my hardest, or you know, did I put as much effort as I could into this? What can I do better? And you know, you trust the process and you go in 100%, you'll undeniably find good results. And that's what I would tell myself, because I would have saved myself a lot of needed but questionability, like in times where I felt weak or underappreciated or whatever. Like, you just keep going. And I had some, I mean, even with Super Rare, like selling a collaborative piece on Super Rare in late 2020 and not getting it onto Super Rare until the fall of 2022 was a hard one for me. But I kept making art, I kept communicating, growing community, and all of a sudden, you know, here we are, and that's a result of hard work and not stopping. And I thank myself for doing that, because I might be holding a stop and go paddle covered in mosquitoes in the middle of fucking Alaska.
Love to hear it.
And that's awesome, man. I feel like it's one of those things where when we're going through it, we always wonder, like, are we making the right moves? We start doubting ourselves.
Yeah.
But when we get to where we need to be, we look back, we're like, okay, that all happened for a reason.
Yeah, and going back to psychedelics again, like, you always realize those full circle moments, and sometimes they last a week and sometimes they last like 2 years. But yeah, you just gotta like trust yourself and like tell people to like fuck off, and like remember like that you are in control of your own dominion, and like people project a lot, and those are those times where you have to be like, I'm not gonna fucking listen to that, and like I'm just gonna keep going and doing my thing. You look at any of the artists that have like set themselves in stone in this space, and they've gone against, like, at one point or another, or whether you realize it or not, like those artists that you see at the top have gone through the exact same shit, you know what I mean? And then they reach the point where I'm gonna share like the progressive and good side of things, so you're not always gonna hear about like the bad shit, the tough times and stuff like that, and you got to keep that in mind, and that should motivate you to continue forward.
That's a good note to wrap it up on.
I think so too.
Yeah. Thank you, Connor, for sitting down with us.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, Bernardo.
This was fun.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. This has been a great time.
This has been a vibe.
This has been a vibe.
Without further ado, do the cut emoji.